Jenna, Lewis's assistant, is pregnant, and the child is his. By the time I learned this news, that woman's belly was already 7 months along. He told me that as long as I agreed to keep the child, I would forever be his wife, the president's wife of the GU group. I simply shook my head lightly and stubbornly asked him, "You can only choose one, me or the child." That night, he spent the whole night alone on the balcony smoking. In the end, he still didn't give me his answer. However, I no longer care about these things. No matter which one he ultimately chooses, I will not choose him again. In the 7th year of marrying Lewis, he cheated on me with his assistant Jenna. I never imagined we would meet in this way. At the hospital entrance, I stood still watching Lewis get out of his Maybach, walk to the passenger side, gently open the car door, and carefully help a pregnant woman out. I was all too familiar with the tenderness on his face. The woman must have said something, his lips moved, and though I couldn't hear what he said, I clearly saw him gently flick her forehead with his finger, his eyes brimming with affection that was about to overflow. In the next moment, he quickly concealed the expression on his face, feeling a bit awkward and surprised as he made eye contact with me. His gaze was somewhat evasive, yet he did not release the hands that were wrapped around the woman's waist. The woman beside him also noticed me, her eyes, which had been filled with laughter, instantly turned teary upon meeting my slightly scrutinizing gaze. Perhaps sensing the woman's unease, Lewis didn't bother with me, leaning down to whisper something in her ear, and then gently kissing her forehead before leading her toward me. He walked slowly, likely accommodating that woman. His steps were steady and composed, and within just a few minutes, there was no trace of the panic I had caught him in. Truly, he was the president of the GU group. I stared at him, saying nothing. After a long while, he seemed somewhat helpless and sighed, then touched my slightly cold cheek. "Hannah, why are you at the hospital? Are you feeling unwell?" I turned my head away silently. I asked him softly, "Aren't you going to explain this to me?" Lewis did not answer my question. Instead, he firmly pulled me into his arms, comforting me. "It's just a little assistant, I'll explain it to you properly when we get home tonight, okay?" His gentle words ultimately made me unable to hold back my tears. I wiped my face haphazardly with my hand, stubbornly raised my head to meet his gaze, desperately wanting an answer. Lewis knew my character, what I wanted, I would definitely get. If he didn't give me an explanation, then today neither he nor that woman would leave easily. So he succinctly told me, "The child in her womb is mine, and she is already 7 months along." At the moment those words fell, my mind went blank. Time seemed to stand still. I bit my lip tightly until it bled, and the intense pain struck my brain, bringing me back to my senses. Stumbling, I broke free from his embrace. Lewis held my hand, softly coaxing, "Hannah, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. You can hit me or punish me, just please don't hurt yourself, okay?" I don't know how he has the face to say such things. Clearly, he is the one who cheated during the marriage, and he is also the one who fathered an illegitimate child. How can he still have the nerve to care about me? Just as we were silently confronting each other, that woman walked up to me. Her voice was soft, but her eyes were filled with provocation towards me. "Madam, please don't misunderstand, this child is an accident, and Mr. Lewis and I have nothing to do with each other." After saying this, the tears that had long been welling up in her eyes finally fell. "Madam, I beg you to believe me, if I could, I would want to get rid of him more than anyone else." "Enough. Stop talking." Resentment, jealousy, grievance, anger, these emotions filled my heart, and I couldn't help but break down and shout. "Ah!" The woman standing in front of me was startled, her body swaying and falling right into Lewis's arms. I stared blankly as Lewis carefully held her in his arms, patting her shoulder again and again, comforting her. A terrifying thought flashed through my mind. I suddenly lunged towards the two of them. "Damn it. You all deserve to die." Just as I was about to crash into the woman's stomach, my body was pushed away with great force. I awkwardly sat on the ground, looking at the wound on my palm that was already seeping blood, and gave a bleak smile. Lewis was also shocked by the scene before him. He never expected that one day he would personally push his wife to the ground. Later, Louis abandoned his pregnant assistant and hurriedly took me to see a doctor before returning home. But deep down, I knew that he and I would never have a chance again. Back at home, Louis gave me what seemed like a reasonable explanation. The plot was cliché: a drunken night, a woman's unique physical condition, and if she were to have an abortion, she would never have the chance to be a mother again. He had no choice but to keep this child. He told me he had no options. And I just sat there motionless on the sofa, not saying a word. That night, he stood on the balcony of the living room, smoking one cigarette after another. After 7 years of marriage, how could I not see that he was using this almost self-destructive way to make me feel pain and force me to forgive him? We know each other too well. We both clearly understand where the other's bottom line lies. We are stuck like this, neither of us willing to back down. The sky gradually brightened. Louis threw away the cigarette but in his hand, turned around, and came to my side. Are you hungry? I'll make your favorite century egg and lean meat porridge, okay? His tone was still as gentle and considerate as before. He was as composed as if we had never had an argument. The president of the GU Group, a man who dominates the business world, could one day be so self-deceiving. Having not had a drop of water all night, my voice was a bit hoarse, but very firm. Louis, sit down, we need to talk. Louis paused, not having turned back for a long time. He had been trying to escape, wanting to downplay this major issue into something minor, something that could be forgotten. But I am not someone who can settle. This, I believe, as his lover of 7 years, he knows better than anyone. Even if he was truly drunk that day, and that woman and that child were an accident, I still cannot forgive him. So, he had been hiding it from me all along. If it weren't for that day when I happened to run into them at the hospital, I think Louis would have waited until the child was born to confess to me. Or perhaps he would send that woman abroad, giving that child a new identity to keep in the GU family. But a lie is ultimately a lie, and it will eventually be exposed. In the end, Louis still did not sit down. That day, he practically fled in a panic. He loved me, and I have never doubted that. If he didn't love me, he wouldn't have cared for me so attentively over these 7 years. If he didn't love me, he wouldn't have gone to such lengths to hide this matter from me. It is precisely because he loves me that he dares not face me and hurriedly left home. After that day, Louis didn't come home for an entire week. Yet he still had the housekeeper check on me every day, to the point where even she came to advise me, "Madam, you and Sir are the most compatible and loving couple I have ever seen." As the saying goes, couples may argue at the head of the bed but make up at the foot. Whatever the issue, you can resolve it. Today I went to deliver documents to Sir, and you wouldn't believe it, he has lost so much weight. We have been married for 7 years, and the housekeeper has been with us for those 7 years. In all that time, she has never seen Louis and me argue. It's no wonder she could say such things. She must think we are just an ordinary couple having a quarrel. But the truth is, Louis has cheated, and even a love child is about to be born. How can I accept that? The phone suddenly rang. It was Louis's call. "Sister-in-law, Louis is drunk and keeps shouting that he wants to see you." I decisively replied, "Don't worry about him. You all should focus on what you need to do." After hanging up, the frustration in my heart only grew. Drunk again, always drunk. His figure uncontrollably flashed through my mind. In the end, I still couldn't bring myself to leave him there alone. I got up, grabbed my car keys, and walked out the door. Nightshade Bar. This is where they often gather. On the top floor, there's the private room he has reserved for years. The door to the private room was slightly ajar, and I stood at the entrance without going in. Because I saw a pregnant woman standing in front of Louis. On the sofa, Louis was indeed drunk, sprawled out like a puddle of mud. Louis's friend awkwardly said, "Miss Jenna, I'm sorry to trouble you, but Louis is this drunk, and his wife won't take care of him." The woman waved her hand and stepped forward to help Louis up. But she was unexpectedly pushed back. She gasped and then patted her chest. Louis seemed to be a bit more sober. He looked at her and forced a smile that was uglier than crying. "Jenna, Hannah doesn't want me anymore, are you happy now?" Lewis kept mumbling, "Hannah doesn't want me anymore," while continuing to search for alcohol. He grabbed a bottle and recklessly poured it into his mouth. No one could stop him, or perhaps no one dared to stop him. Jenna strode forward and snatched the bottle from Lewis's hand, smashing it to the ground with a loud bang. The room fell silent in an instant. Even Lewis was taken aback by her action. "Lewis, pregnant women shouldn't stand for too long. Get up and take me home." Lewis remained dazed and slumped on the sofa, not responding to her. "Lewis, you're going to scare the baby like this." Everyone thought Lewis would still ignore her, but they saw the man who had been slumped on the sofa slowly get up. He picked up his coat and unsteadily followed the woman out. I hid in the dim corner, watching the man and woman in front of me. Suddenly, I laughed. As I laughed, tears began to flow. I drove, following their taxi, watching as it stopped in front of an upscale community. I saw Lewis get out and follow the woman upstairs. The tall building lit up. I sat in the car all night, not seeing Lewis come out. At 7 in the morning, he came out, and 10 minutes later, he went back in carrying breakfast. I watched that figure, smiled bitterly, and drove away. When I got home, I called Lewis. The phone rang once and was immediately picked up by the person on the other end. I asked him to come back, but I didn't mention the divorce. Looking at this man in front of me, who had lost some weight, I felt not a shred of pity. "I didn't pick you up last night out of spite. Where did you spend the night?" Lewis paused for a moment while peeling the apple, and after a while, he said, "I went back to the office." His company has a lounge, and sometimes when he is tired from working overtime, he will rest there for a while. But after all these years, this is the first time he has spent the night at the office. I can't remember when Lewis started learning to lie to me. The man who once promised to be honest with me for a lifetime has now turned into a common liar who speaks falsehoods at will. I did not expose his clumsy lies, for it has become meaningless to me. How do you plan to arrange for her? Once she gives birth, I will arrange for someone to send her abroad. As for the child, after all, he is my family's bloodline and cannot be left to wander outside. If you don't like it, I will keep him at the old house, and he won't appear in front of you. After saying this, he knelt on one knee, wrapped his arms around my waist, and buried his head deeply in my lap. "Hannah, I really know I was wrong. Please, don't abandon me." The man known for his iron-fisted approach in the business world has been shedding tears one after another these days. In my memory, Lewis only cried when his grandmother passed away, and since then, he has never shed a tear again. Now, he is crying so sorrowfully in front of me. Seeing him like this makes my heart ache. But I know he does not deserve my sympathy. I want to see her. The meeting place was chosen by me. It was at that woman's house. Lewis was waiting for me outside. Jenna leaned against the sofa, gently caressing her prominently rounded belly, her eyes filled with tenderness and anticipation. That night, Mr. Lewis was very demanding, and I was terrified. But later, as I looked at the man sleeping beside me, for the first time I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. As she spoke, she suddenly laughed, likely recalling some beautiful memories. She looked up at me, still with that gentle demeanor, but her words were as hard as iron. "Madam, my child with Mr. Lewis is about to be born. We have already checked, and it's a boy. Why don't you just allow us to be a family of 3? Looking at the woman in front of me who was provoking me, I was not surprised at all. Because on the night I went to find Lewis, she saw me and even gave me a contemptuous smile. At that moment, I knew that this woman was definitely not as innocent as Lewis had said. Perhaps this child was all part of her scheme. But all of this was no longer related to me. I had long since given up on Lewis, so why would I care about the provocation from a mistress? The reason I am here is simply because I am a bit unwilling to accept it. Perhaps seeing that I was not as affected by her words as she had imagined, she slowly got up and pushed open the door to the adjacent bedroom. What came into view was a cozy children's room. The bed, wardrobe, toys, and even the color of the walls in here were all personally selected and arranged by Mr. Lewis. He actually cares about this child much more than he claims. On the contrary, he is very, very much looking forward to the baby in my belly. She was flaunting in front of me, boasting about how much my husband, my lover, dotes on her and the baby in her belly. I wanted to remain calm. I told myself it was okay, he was just a scumbag after all. Hadn't I already decided to let him go? But I coldly watched everything in the room, unable to suppress the anger in my heart. It turned out that Louis cared about this child so much without my knowledge. It felt as if all my strength had been drained away. I leaned heavily against the dining table and accidentally knocked over the water cup. The cup fell to the ground, making a crisp sound, just like my marriage with Louis, shattered into pieces. Outside the door, Louis heard the noise and rushed in to find Jenna on the floor, crying out in pain, while I stood swaying beside the dining table. That day, for the first time, Louis unhesitatingly chose someone else over me. As he walked past me holding that woman, I clearly saw Jenna give me a triumphant smile. She had every reason to be proud because she had gotten what she wanted. I saw Louis pause for a moment. In the end, he still walked past me, heading straight to the hospital with Jenna in his arms. I stood there for nearly half an hour before accepting the fact that he had left me behind. Later, I went to the hospital, and by the time I arrived, besides Louis, my in-laws were already there. It turned out they had known about this matter for a long time. All along, the only one kept in the dark like a fool was me. After all, that child is Louis's first child and also the first grandchild of the Gu family, so it makes sense that they would know. What surprised me was my mother-in-law. The first thing she did upon seeing me was to raise her hand and slap me hard. For 7 years, she has treated me like her own daughter. She often shows concern for my well-being, and everyone in the prominent families envies me for having a good husband and a good mother-in-law. But now, when it comes to her grandson, I have become the first person she blames and abandons. Hannah, you better pray that my grandson is safe, or I will make sure you accompany him to the grave. Hearing the commotion, Louis immediately shielded me behind him. His mother was even angrier. Louis, have you been kicked in the head by a donkey? Why are you protecting her? She wants to harm your own son. So what? It's just as well that the child is gone. I never wanted him in the first place. If it weren't for her deliberately keeping this child behind my back, Hannah and I wouldn't have ended up in this situation. No one knows how happy he was when he walked in and saw Jenna lying on the floor. If only that child could have been lost. Without the child, perhaps his Hannah could still forgive him. Their days might still continue happily. Yes, he regretted it. The last time he saw Hannah so heartbroken in the hospital, he regretted leaving this child. Soon, the doctor came out of the examination room. The child was fine. The in-laws immediately rushed over to Jenna, showering her with concern. But her gaze was fixed on Louis at the door. She looked pitiful. She designed this for me, so how could I possibly let her go? I deliberately exposed the half of my face that had been hit. It must be swollen by now. Louis, I'm leaving first. Sure enough, he felt heartbroken. He didn't care about Jenna but followed me out of the hospital instead. As I left, I glanced at the woman in the hospital room and returned her a similarly provocative smile. At least for now, Louis's thoughts were more on me. Even if I didn't care, I wouldn't let a mistress have him. In the days that followed, I never brought it up again. I went about my life step by step. Just when everyone thought I had compromised and accepted that child, I was already prepared to leave. My things were already packed, anything I didn't need was either donated or thrown away, leaving only my personal belongings. The divorce agreement had been discussed thoroughly with my lawyer, just waiting for Louis to sign. I chose the day Jenna gave birth as my departure date. Didn't she ask me to support their little family? Then I would do as she wished. There was one more piece of news that I kept hidden. I was pregnant. Louis and I have been trying for 7 years to have a child, and we went through 2 rounds of IVF, both of which were unsuccessful. I never expected that at this moment, he would finally come. It seems like he arrived at the wrong time, but perhaps it is the right time. If it weren't for this little life inside me supporting me, I might have already given up, let alone have a well-organized plan to leave. Actually, that day I went to the hospital was originally because my period was delayed, and I wanted to check if I was pregnant. I never expected to run into them right at the hospital entrance. Although I ultimately couldn't get a proper checkup, I had already confirmed with a pregnancy test. However, the child's father, as well as the grandparents, have no right to know of his existence. On the day Jenna gave birth, Louis was called away at 3 in the morning. As he left, he whispered in my ear, "Hannah, once this child is born, let's forget the past and start anew, okay? I promise they will never appear in front of you and the child." He knew I was pretending to be asleep. These days, he was also aware that I had been just going through the motions and had not accepted this matter as he thought I had. I kept my eyes tightly shut, giving him no response. Yet, when he opened the door, I asked him once again, "Louis, you can only choose one between me and the child, who will you choose?" Looking at his conflicted and sad expression, I forced a smile and shook my head. I had already decided to leave, so what was I still hoping for? We all knew the answer, so why cling to it? Seeing me lie down again, Louis gently said, "Hannah, wait for me to come back, I will definitely resolve everything." But, Louis, I no longer need your solution. Because I no longer need you. After he left, I immediately got up, placed the divorce agreement and USB drive that I had already prepared on the bedside table, and then left this home that was once filled with laughter and joy without looking back. I booked a flight for the day after tomorrow. On this day, I decided to return to my parents' home. Even though it had never given me a shred of warmth. Standing at the door, looking at this grand 3-story villa, I felt a surge of emotions. An aunt recognized me and shouted, "The rich girl from the old Chin family is back." In an instant, I was surrounded tightly by more than a dozen people. My parents also came over to ask, but when they saw me empty-handed, their faces stiffened for a moment. With a forced smile, she brought me into the house, and before I could even sit down, my mother slapped me hard. "You ungrateful little girl, after all this time, you can't even bring your mother something nice." My dad chimed in from the side, "Exactly, you only know how to enjoy yourself in the villa, and you don't even think about sharing your good fortune with us. It's like we raised you for nothing. I got divorced, and from now on, Louis won't take care of you anymore." When that bombshell dropped, the whole family turned pale, looking at each other in disbelief. See, this is my family of origin. They only know how to take money from me and never care whether I'm happy or not. I don't know if it was the influence of Louis, but seeing them so defensive, I actually felt a bit happy. Next, I threw them a second bombshell. I left with nothing. When they realized they could no longer squeeze money out of me, they directly kicked me out. "Get out, you money-losing burden. You can't even keep a man, I don't have a useless daughter like you." I stood outside the door, watching them lock it without mercy. I felt neither sadness nor much sorrow. After all, I had long known that this was never my home. If it weren't for Louis, I would have been married off to the widower at the east end of the village long ago. I still have to thank Louis for giving me a warm home and allowing me to live a stable life for 7 years. So, since I've decided to part ways, I absolutely cannot let this family of vampires disturb the Gu family any longer. After today, everyone in the village will know that I have been left with nothing. This way, Louis can live his life in peace. With these worries resolved, I boarded the plane without any lingering attachments. A person has left the city where they lived for many years, and also left the man who once vowed to be together for a lifetime. On the plane to a foreign land, I fell into deep memories. Looking back at my past with Louis, it was actually quite sweet. At that time, my mother told me that my grandfather was ill and needed to be hospitalized. She said it would require a lot of money, which our family simply could not afford. In order for my grandfather to receive treatment, I took out all my savings, leaving myself with no money even for meals. Before my salary came in next month, I could only eat boiled noodles and plain water, and I could only eat once a day. Later, Louis found out. He looked at me with pleading eyes and asked, "Hannah, why didn't you tell me? You still have me, don't hold on alone." He held me tightly, his tone filled with concern for me. That day, I first had the thought of relying on someone. Later we got married, and in the 7 years of our marriage, he never broke his promise. Ever since my grandfather passed away, all those chaotic people in my family have been kept away by him, not allowed to appear in front of me again. Even now, I have never doubted Louis's feelings for me. At least, before Jenna appeared, he was a very good husband. But even the best people can make mistakes. Unfortunately, this mistake is something I cannot tolerate. One cannot simply rely on memories to happily walk through life. Even if I don't leave this time, what about the future? That child will always be a thorn embedded in my heart. As the child grows older, that thorn digs deeper and deeper. After being embedded in the heart for so long, it will start to rot. I never truly believed what Louis said about never letting her and the child appear before me again. Not to mention that a child cannot simply be without a father, but just considering Jenna, the woman who could let Louis's parents know about the child's existence right under his nose, and convince Louis to keep the child, these two things alone are not something an ordinary woman could achieve. Over time, using the child as an excuse, Louis will only leave me more and more often. I am unwilling to be abandoned, and I do not want a third person to appear in our marriage. I want the beautiful memories between us to remain at this moment. To stay in this moment when we still love each other. This way, in the future, we won't look at each other with disdain. The plane landed steadily, and I looked up at the azure sky. Louis, goodbye. From now on, we will go our separate ways, each finding our own peace in the vastness of the sky and sea. Jenna successfully gave birth to a boy, weighing 6 pounds and 6 ounces, even the numbers are so auspicious. The moment the nurse brought the child out, Louis was overjoyed. This was his son, his bloodline, his long-awaited first child. So that day, he stayed with Jenna in the hospital all day long. That day, he did not go home. He thought he would first arrange for Jenna and the baby, and then he would no longer have any contact with them. From then on, he would wholeheartedly live his life with Hannah. He believed that as long as he sincerely repented and was strict with himself in the future, over time, Hannah would eventually forgive him. Then they could return to the way they used to be, loving and happy. But as Hannah was not waiting for him at home, she had quietly left alone. When his aunt came to the hospital to tell him this news, he nearly dropped the son he was holding. He closed his eyes tightly, letting a tear fall. Later, he did not go looking for her. Because he knew that even if he found her, Hannah would not forgive him. His Hannah had made up her mind to be without him. He carefully read the divorce agreement on the bedside several times, but in the end, he still couldn't bring himself to sign it. He also watched the video on the USB drive. After watching, he felt even more hopelessly foolish. At the end of the video, there was an audio message left for him by Hannah. Louis cried out loud after hearing this. It turned out she knew everything. It turned out he was so wrong. Louis, after 7 years of marriage, I'm sorry that because of me, I couldn't give you a child that belongs to the Gu family. No matter what reason you had for leaving this child behind, it no longer matters, because for me, whether you stayed or not is completely meaningless. Louis, let's part on good terms. Hannah had long seen through his inner calculations. For someone like him, who had been scheming in the business world for many years, he only cared about himself. What did others matter? The real reason that child could stay was that Louis wanted a child of his own. As long as he didn't want it, that child would never have the chance to be born. Even his parents couldn't stop his decision. Just like back then, when everyone, including his parents, opposed their marriage, Louis still gave her a grand wedding despite the immense pressure. It was his tacit approval that allowed Jenna to secretly find his parents. It was also his tacit approval that gave Jenna the opportunity to slander and humiliate her. Louis wanted to have it both ways, but in the end, he lost the person he cared about the most. 6 months later, Louis found my address and wanted to come find me, but he was stopped by his cousin Skylar. Skylar is my senior. She helped me a lot during school, and this time, sneaking abroad, I could only manage so smoothly thanks to her assistance. Louis, you made a mess and hurt Hannah. Can you please stop bothering her? She's already having a hard time on her own. Faced with her indignant cousin, Louis couldn't utter a word. He had long regretted it, but time wouldn't give him a chance to start over. After a long silence, he finally asked in a hoarse voice, "Sister, how is she?" "She's doing well without you. Eating well, sleeping well, and has even gained some weight recently." Louis helplessly revealed a stiff, bitter smile. "That's good, take care of her." After hanging up the phone, Louis finally dared to cry out loud. In the dim room, he wept uncontrollably. On the other end, Skylar hung up the phone in annoyance. "Where were you earlier? What a jerk." I laughed at my friend who was standing up for me and said, "All right, don't be angry. Look, I'm not bothered, so why are you still upset? How can it be the same? You two are a relationship I personally brought together, and now it has turned out like this." She truly felt sorry for us. But when fate is over, it's over, there's no chance to start again. Skylar's gaze fell on me again. "Hannah, what about you, child? Aren't you going to tell them over there?" I stroked my already rounded belly and smiled, saying, "He doesn't have a father. This child belongs solely to me, no one can take him away." 3 months later, I successfully gave birth to a daughter. From then on, I was no longer alone in this world. At first, I was a technical shareholder in Skylar's company. Although it was a small company, the dividends were enough for my daughter and me to live on. I have enough ability to provide my daughter with a stable and happy life. Unknowingly, my daughter has turned 4. I have also long since gotten used to living in a foreign country with just the two of us. If it weren't for Skylar getting married, I think I would never have set foot back in my home country. For years later, seeing Louis again, I was able to face him very calmly, as if he were a stranger. Listening to Qingli, after he saw the USB drive I gave him, he became suspicious of Jenna. It was only after investigating that he found out that the drink back then had been drugged. Jenna deliberately drugged him, plotting against him. After learning this truth, he unhesitatingly handed the evidence to the police. Just after giving birth and still in her confinement period, Jenna was directly sent to the detention center by him. Even though she was still nursing, what Louis wanted to do was never going to be impossible. Soon, Jenna's verdict was announced. 5 years, by the time she gets out, finding a job will probably be difficult. After hearing this, I felt nothing. I just felt a bit sorry for that child. We knew each other too well. Seeing my attitude, Louis realized that there was no possibility for us anymore. But he still stubbornly asked me to meet him at the cafe. "Hannah, can't you give me one more chance?" His question sounded so humble, yet I felt nothing at all. I gently stirred the coffee on the table and asked lightly, "Louis, I remember you never drink the wine offered by women during social events. But that day, why did you drink the wine Jenna offered you?" Louis's eyes trembled, his hands clenched into fists, and he felt nervous inside. "Admit it, Louis, that day, you actually had feelings for Jenna. This was also the real reason why I had to leave. It is also a reality I have always been reluctant to face. The president of the Gu family group has many women wanting to climb into his bed. Yet, only that one succeeded. She even gave birth to his first son. Even just a moment of infatuation is not acceptable. That's why he gave Jenna the opportunity. He tacitly allowed her to get pregnant, tacitly allowed her to give birth to the child, and tacitly allowed her to provoke me. In fact, Louis knows the reason himself, but he is just stubbornly unwilling to admit it. As I was leaving, I saw Louis slumped over the table, his shoulders trembling slightly. Just one glance, and I averted my gaze. In the future, he will become a passerby in my life. Louis, goodbye. Oh, never to be seen again.